So, okay. I'm going to talk for like maybe 10, 15 minutes just about academic life in the US. Um, so this is a continuation of the professional development session from earlier. So I think we've already gotten like a ton of really good information. And so I'm going to add a little bit about like kind of what some of the differences are about like life in the US in academia. And this is like really informal. So I think it's great. We have people here from like so many different countries. I think it's like really awesome. And, you know, all these different countries are all like slightly different the way they do things. So I'll just tell you a little bit about the US. Okay, so I guess first thing I should say is that there's both public and private schools versus private. And in the US, they really function the same way. Like there isn't like on average, they're like the same amount of prestige. Like there's good ones, there's bad ones. It's just a question of where the funding comes from, but they kind of function the same way. I guess so. Like public, obviously, the funding comes from the government, and then or is it private schools? It comes more from tuition. So public schools, they're usually associated with states. There's like University of Michigan, the state of Michigan, University of Washington, or so on. And then private ones, right, they're all over. But yeah, they're kind of, for the way you would interact with them, it's all the same. We also have universities versus colleges. And I don't know if this is the same in Mexico or in your home countries. Generally, like universities, they have both graduate students and undergraduate students, both graduate and undergrad, and they're focused on research. Colleges only have undergraduates. And it's more focused on like teaching and undergraduate education. I'll say teaching focused. However, there are some exceptions. My school is called Boston College, but it is in fact a university. So there are some exceptions. And it's kind of for historical reasons. At some point in the past it was a college and then it became a university, but it was too late to change the name. So there are a few exceptions, but mostly, if you're going to go for like a graduate school or for a postdoc, you'd be going to a university. So the sort of the path would be students get a bachelor's at undergrad, and this could be from a college or a university. In terms of undergraduate degrees, they're equally prestigious. So after that, you go to graduate school, and in the US, in math programs, we were talking about this earlier, you typically do not do a master's. So this is usually a PhD program. You go directly to the PhD program, and the PhD program will include a master's in it. You just get a master's along the way. Includes a master's. So undergrad in the US is usually 4 years. And then grad school is, let's say, 5 to 7 years. Or maybe I should say 4. Although I don't know, not very many people do it in 4. So, and then after that, you get to the postdocs. Postdocs are typically 3 years. Usually 3 years.
For each, right?
For each, yep. You might cycle back. And then the next stage is like assistant professor, and this is like a permanent job. Professor. So let me talk a little bit about like funding, I guess, like how, and then like applying to these programs and like what your responsibilities are. So maybe let me start with grad school. I'm going to expand grad school out in this picture to years. I'm going to make it bigger. Years 1, 2, and then like 3 through however many. So a big difference is that in the US for math grad programs, you do not have to decide what topic you're going to study when you enter. You also do not decide who your supervisor is going to be until after you get there. So you spend year 1 basically taking courses. So these are like, sort of like, we call them like the core courses. There's like analysis, algebra, geometry, topology, number theory. It's a little different at every school, but you just take a very wide selection of courses. And that might continue into year 2. Maybe at some point in your second year, you start thinking about who your advisor might be. So you start thinking about your supervisor. So you get accepted to the department as a whole, and then once you're in the program, you can ask any professor in that department to be your advisor. So many students enter grad school not knowing what area of math they want to do. Or they come in, they think they want to do one area, but then they completely change their mind and they ask somebody else. And so then somewhere around here, maybe like kind of beginning of year 3, you've decided who your target advisor is, and you approach this person, and it's a bit like asking someone on a date. You say, "Excuse me, would you like to be my advisor?" And then, so ask out your advisor. No, I shouldn't say that. Ask someone to be your advisor. Ask your advisor. And like maybe that happens here too, but you kind of like make up your minds, and you get to know the faculty, and then you pick someone. Somewhere around, right? Okay, so year 1, maybe part of year 2, you're taking courses. Here, you're still taking some courses, but you're starting to like read things and talk to the different department faculty and like trying to learn more about a subject area. And after you've figured out who your advisor is going to be, you eventually start reading more and meeting with that person, and then they have you take an exam. And this exam is different at different schools, but basically what this exam is doing is it's saying that you need to prove to your advisor and a committee of a few other faculty members that you have learned enough that you're ready to start research on a particular topic. And so the timing of this exam and exactly what it looks like is kind of flexible. It depends on the advisor and the school. Sometimes it's an oral exam, sometimes it's written. It kind of varies. Generally, once you pass it, you get a master's degree. So the master's degree you just kind of get it along the way. So I remember like when I was in grad school, after you take this exam, there's a form that we had to turn into the graduate school to say that we passed this exam, and there's a little box on it, and it said, "Do you want a master's?" And you could either check the box or not check the box. So it was kind of like a non-event. At this point, if you decide that you do not want to continue in graduate school, if you've passed this exam, you can leave with a master's degree. Okay. So after that, then, from here on, you do research until you eventually graduate. So a big difference is that, as I said, when you're applying to grad school, you don't pick a specific advisor. That also means that the way you apply to graduate school is you apply to the program as a whole. So, like my department, we have a committee every year. Some subset of us faculty members get put on a committee that's the graduate admissions committee, and we read all the files of everybody who applies, and we just pick out, the strongest class. But so it's less about who wants to do exactly what and more about getting a well-rounded group. Right. So then you get to be, I guess the next step is postdoc. Right. So I guess I should say also, right. So what's how are you being funded? How are you surviving? So typically you get paid by the graduate school. And the default assumption is that graduate students teach classes. Like that's basically how they get paid. So you spend some time teaching and then you spend the rest of the time learning and researching. So your sort of responsibilities, make that a category down here. Responsibilities. Teaching. This might be teaching your own course. It might be grading homeworks, but somehow participating in teaching of undergraduates. That's basically like how you earn enough money to live. Learning and research. And so the money comes from the department, and it's enough to live on, but it's definitely not a lot. You're not going to get rich. So it's not typically funded really by individual professors. It's like my department says like each year we're going to admit X many people. And that's how much funding we have from the university. Is that a question? Teaching, it usually starts year one and goes all the way through. That's sort of like the default. Like that's sort of the default assumption is that you'll be teaching all the time. Sometimes you get lucky and your advisor has like extra money, or you get a fellowship, or like there's some reason that you don't teach, but typically it's like throughout, and that's considered part of the program. Sorry? Whole program, yeah. Yeah. To be teaching? So at my school, graduate students, there's either graders or they're instructors. And if you're an instructor, what it means is you teach in the classroom for like 3 hours a week. So that means you're physically in the classroom in front of the students for 3 hours. But you also have to like grade all the homeworks, make all the homeworks, grade all the exams, have office hours. So maybe 10 hours a week. I think grading is probably also about 10 hours a week. I mean, it varies, but like I'd say like maybe 10 hours a week is like kind of roughly average. Yeah, so you do that throughout. You develop a lot of teaching credentials. You discover whether or not you like teaching. And you also learn, like, if you grading for courses, if they're upper level courses, can actually be like a learning experience. So like sometimes you grade for other graduate classes. So like if you say grade for the graduate algebraic topology class, you're going to be really good at algebraic topology by the end. Yeah, so then you get to do postdocs. So postdocs are, again, usually funded by the university. And again, I guess this is probably more similar to the situation in Mexico. They're 3 years. Responsibilities here are, again, usually teaching. And you need to produce a lot of research. And you also maybe start supervising undergrads. And so again, the way this works typically is the funding is from the department or from the university. So you apply to the department. After that, right, you apply for more postdocs or a permanent position. See, what else should I say? In terms of like visas, so if you are not an American citizen, but you want to get involved in all this, so I think the way to do is you apply for either graduate school or for a job, and then once you get it, the school will help with visas. Right, so schools have tons of international people coming in. They have whole offices that are set up to help students and visitors work with visa stuff. I will say, like, the political situation in the U.S. is like getting really, really tense right now. So everything's a little bit like, I don't know. It's a little unclear whether visas are going to change, but still, the message is like, first apply, get into whatever it is, and then they can help with visas. I think that's kind of like roughly what the funding. Oh, applications. So how do you apply to these things? So to apply to, let's see, where did the eraser go? Okay, I'm just gonna write here. So to apply to grad school and to apply to postdocs. So grad school, you apply to the department. These applications, I think they all go at the same time each year. I forget exactly. I think it's like December to January. So you go to each school's website and you apply to each school separately. It costs money to apply. There's a fee. It actually can be pretty expensive. You can, if the fee is a problem, you can contact the school and say, I really want to apply, but I don't have the financial resources. Can you give me a waiver? And they often do that. So I'll say you can request a waiver. But it can be quite expensive. Like each one could be like $100. And if you apply to 15 schools, you're talking about $1,500 US dollars. It gets expensive really fast. You might also have to take an exam called the GRE, Graduate something. It's some standardized test. Not all schools require it. Some do, some don't. A lot of them are removing the requirement. Okay, great. It's a dumb test anyway. Yeah. Okay, so that, yeah. You find out where you get in. So postdocs, all the job applications are like October through December, like maybe like mid-December. And in the US, they're all listed in one place. They're listed on one website called mathjobs.org. This makes applying for postdocs really great. I don't know if you've used like the Common App, but you apply for them through this website. So you upload all your materials to this one website, and then you just like click, I want to apply to this school and this school and this school, and you like send it off. You don't have to pay for that. But they're all pretty much like basically around now. There's a lot of stressed people. Yes, that's applications. Yeah, I think that's kind of what I had thought of to say. But I'm happy to answer any questions. Yeah. Oh, the GRE score? So so more and more schools are not requiring it. So I think generally the way the GRE is used in math graduate programs is if you get a terrible score, they will notice. But as long as it's not terrible, nobody really cares. Do you want to, yeah. Okay. I don't know if that's still true. I know on the website we said like that. Okay. Uh, yeah. Like also there's a general GRE and there's like a GRE subject test. So this is just a very general exam that like anybody going to any kind of graduate program might take. Whereas this, the GRE subject test in math, is actually really hard, and it's because it's taken by people who want to go to math PhD programs. So like this is like the math that you probably did in like when you were like 12. It's like multiplying, addition, division, stuff like that. This is like advanced topics that like maybe actually matter. The subject test, okay. Yeah. Yeah, but I guess what you're saying is like even for this one, it's like as long as you do pretty well, like it doesn't really matter exactly what score you get. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, good point. TOEFL, test of English as a foreign language. I don't actually, do you want to say anything about that? I don't know much about. Okay. Okay. Hmm. But you could still grade homeworks, like. Oh yeah, because it probably yeah. Good point.
Any more question?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Do I recommend you masters first? So like if you can get into a strong program in the US without getting a master's first, great. I will say I think admission to graduate programs in the US, like the PhD programs, is really competitive, like at every level. And so, it's just hard to get in. And so like if you have a master's, that's just like a little bit more. You've taken more classes, you've more experience, so I think it can help you get into like a higher tier of school. Maybe, but maybe you get into it anyway. So yeah, I don't know.
That was my question. What is a competitive shortcut? Yes. If I have good grades,
Yep.
I like these kinds of events, that's competitive. If I have medium grades, but I have main what kind of things could they look? Does it matter for what my
So you definitely need to have good grades. And the more math classes you take, the better. I think activities like this are great, but they're not going to substitute for having really good grades. One thing that is crucial is that you have to have letters of recommendation from your professors. And I don't know if that's the same here, but those letters are really crucial because, a lot of applicants kind of look the same on paper. And like when you read the letters, if you read a letter from a professor who says, I know this student really, really well, this person is really smart, really interested, I think they're going to do great, like that really counts for a lot. So if you are thinking of applying to grad school in the US, I'd encourage you to like think about those relationships with your professors and like think about who will write a really strong letter for you. Because I think that really enhances applications. It's probably similar. Yeah.
I have to write it to there's something that we don't do here so much in Mexico, they do it in Korea. And it's that you have to rate the applicant, compare it to a pool of applicants in the same situation in a percentage. You have to say within 20, the top 10% of the graduate students that you have top before, or in the top 10% of graduate students, it becomes really complicated. You really have to be at the top if you want to compete on
Yeah.
Okay.
Between masters of arts and masters of science.
This is well, they're both master's degrees. Masters of Arts, I think, is more often awarded in areas of the humanities, like languages, literature, history. And then Master of Science is more often awarded to things like math and science. I don't know. Does anybody else want to?
But it depends from the school.
Yeah.
Yeah, but sometimes some schools offers masters of arts in mathematics.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I can say something about that. So at my school, we don't offer a master's of arts, but we do have 2 levels of bachelor's. We have a bachelor's of arts and we have a bachelor's of science, both in math. This is just at my school. And basically this one is the harder one. Like that's sort of the short version. But I don't know if that's true everywhere. Like there's not one hard and fast rule. It really varies from institution to institution.
What?
Okay. Yeah.
Well, let's say thank you to Kathryn